Hi, I'm Chantel Lindsay with Brooklyn's Box, and today we are with Dr. Anupel. This time we switched, almost like Parent Trap, and she's going to interview me today.
That's right.
So stay tuned, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and we'll see you soon.
So today's topic is caregiver burden. And that's the reason why we've switched places, because who else to talk about it than the mother of two medically fragile children who's gone through the ringer,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Twice.
And I consider her an expert on caregiver burden.
Thank you.
Right. So caregiver burden is the fatigue, the stress, the anxiety that someone who's taking care of a person with special needs for long periods of time feels. And as you can imagine, in our population of children with medical complexity, it can be huge, and it can lead to burnout, and it can lead to some very poor health consequences. So it's very important for physicians to address caregiver burden, look for it, identify it, and help address it so that the child actually benefits along with the family.
Yeah.
So, with that in mind, you have two children.
I do.
You have Amaya Rose, who
Yes.
had a stroke when she was 16.
Yes.
And then you have little Brooklyn,
Yes.
who has a pretty severe chronic renal condition.
Yes.
So you've been through this a few times.
I have.
It's interesting and I think really informative for me as a provider to put myself in your shoes. So if you could tell us about what it was like for you from the beginning when when your children first got diagnosed, you were in the hospital, how that was like for you, and then to kind of help us through the process of your journey and the kind of barriers and the difficulties that you
Went there.
through your journey.
So I know for a fact, it's confusing. I guess it's confusing because even when people come in and they tell you a medical situation, it doesn't really mean that you understand it because we didn't go to school for this. So therefore, if someone tells you a kidney issue, you kind of don't think the worst. You think, oh, okay, well, they're just going to give me this and everything's going to be okay. And then years down the road, you start to realize that it's not exactly what you thought. And then I think as a parent, that's when you start doing the research or start trying to figure it out. Because now the caregiver burden has set in and you're trying to figure out how to relieve it yourself. So you're like, whatever I need to learn or whatever I need to figure out, then that's what I'm going to do.
So it sounds like initially there's a shock,
Yeah.
and then kind of a difficulty processing some of the technical stuff.
Very much so, yeah.
Maybe a little denial about
There's always denial, yeah.
how that impacts you.
Yeah, because as a parent, I always say, when I talk to parents, I always say there's two types of medically fragile parents. And it's the one who, their child was birthed with a defect. And then there's the child who something happened or maybe you just learned about it and you have to learn to care for the defect.
Absolutely, I would agree with you.
So it becomes hard to be the second one because it's like saying goodbye to the first child that you knew and moving into a different part. And that could be hard because it's like grieving.
It is. There's a strong element of grief that you have. So internally, you get this information and looks like it's kind of overwhelming and you have so many different feelings about it. Both your children were in the hospital for a long time,
Yeah.
seriously ill. So how was that for you financially, work, paying bills? How did that work for you?
You know, with the first one, a lot of it was save, because you never know. Save, because you never know. And she had, she needed things that the insurance couldn't provide. So there were times where, you know, I lost my car, I lost my house, I lost my office. I've lost a lot of things because I either, one, didn't have the money to get to the children's hospital, or because I just felt that I would sacrifice just to make sure I had a savings so that I could get where I needed to go to take my child.
So the transportation expenses,
Food.
the food.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think a lot of people don't realize when you have a sick child, and especially if you're at a hospital and maybe you didn't have a car to get there, and then you get to this hospital and then they say they're shipping your child out, and then they take your child, but yet you have no car. So you have no way to get there. So then when you do get there, now you have no way back.
Wow.
So it becomes a whole nother issue. And I always tell a story about how I traveled on Greyhound when Brooklyn had no shoes because we had to get back home. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing. I mean, I think that's very powerful. I mean, what our families go through, you know, and how we don't seem to ever pay attention or
Yeah.
acknowledge that part.
That part, yeah.
Did anyone offer you some kind of help during that time?
The beginning, no. There was one doctor, I was thinking, there was one doctor. Before, when Brooklyn first had her diagnosis, everyone kept telling me it was allergies, it was everything else, and here you go. But there was just one doctor who actually believed what I was saying, so that's how we got her diagnosis. In Maya's situation, there was one CPS nurse that believed what I was saying. But it was very hard because out of the one, there were many people.
So you're talking about even getting them appropriately diagnosed?
Yes,
Was
even
it
that was
challenging?
harsh, yes.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
So now you've got a diagnosis, they're sick, they're in intensive care, they're in the hospital, you're there with them, you're suffering financially, you don't have transportation, you don't have enough to eat.
Mm-hmm.
What about the support there? Did anyone from the hospital try to help you with
No,
any kind of services?
no,
No.
no. Every now and then they would throw me a gas card, but not enough to get home. So they would throw me a gas card every now and then. But as far as like a place to stay and those types of things, no. No.
I'd imagine these places are expensive, right?
Yeah.
Los Angeles, and you know, they are expensive places to stay.
Yeah. Or even, I mean, if we even broke it down more, therapy for parents while they were there. Because I think that's a whole, you're lost. And now you're in a place in a whole other city without people that you know, or you don't know how you're going to make it home, or how you're going to, like, especially if this situation is new. You're thinking, whoa, look at this situation, now I have to go care for this child.
High intensity stress.
Yes, very much so.
What could be done differently, would you say, you know, before you got to take them home, around the time of discharge? What kind of things would have been most helpful for you?
I feel a lot of, I know for me, I would have rather been trained better. I would have rather been trained better, and I would have rather known the medical situation better. I feel like when you, for instance, I didn't know a lot about the kidney. Well, I knew a lot about the kidney, but I didn't know a lot about the way in picture it was. in how to really understand it.